On and record. Now I'm going to introduce our beloved Reverend Joel Fotinos.
Hey, everybody. So let me just take a breath and get here with everybody. I love that chant this morning, by the way, Ty. That was beautiful. So this month, we're talking about connecting to culture. And I'm going to actually kind of talk about spiritual culture and how it can help us as we walk through the world. And I'm also going to talk about our tribe, which is the culture we create with people we choose to spend our life with. And it's an interesting time for me to talk about culture at all and about tribes, because in a couple of weeks, I'm going to go visit the place where I grew up in and where I spent most of the first 18 years of my life. Now, I can count probably on maybe one hand and a couple fingers, the number of times in the last 30 years that I have gone back to that place, which is in Western Nebraska. So going there is out of the ordinary for me. It's not a usual thing. I know some people go back to some people live where they grew up, but some people go back to where they grew up all the time. That is not my experience. So it's an unusual thing. And like I said, I left when I was 18. And I guess you could say I left, or you could also say I hightailed it the heck out of there as absolutely fast as I could, because it was in that place, like that state, that county, that town, that block or neighborhood, even sometimes that home, that I felt like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. Isn't that the expression? Has anybody else felt that way ever? And good, so you could relate to that. And at the same time, at that young age, I also had some wanderlust. I wanted to see the world. And for me at that time, of course, this was before the internet and the cell phones and all of that, I felt completely isolated being in, like if you've seen Nebraska, there's that, what we call the panhandle. I was middle of that, which felt like the middle of nowhere. And at that time, in that place, you found out about the world through things like National Geographic and Life magazines. Do you remember those? And TV and movies. And you also learned about them through those slideshow parties that your neighbors would have when they go on vacation and they came back, and then they had everyone over in the neighborhood to show the slides, and they spent 3 hours reliving their vacation through those slides. So all other places to me always seemed so like exotic and exciting and interesting, and I wanted to experience that. And I was also a spiritual kid, but the options there where I grew up at that time seemed very limited, at least to a young person like myself. The spiritual culture there was mainly Christian, and more Christian. So that's what it seemed like. I was Lutheran for many years, then I was an evangelical, then I was a charismatic Christian for a while. And I loved the devotion, but somehow that devotion to this loving God always came back, filtered through the church members and the dogma, into becoming punitive and punishing. And it always seemed coincidentally that God always seemed to hate the very same people they did. Now, ain't that funny? Like, does God make us in its image, or do we make God in ours? Anyway, I was one of those people that they hated. So I sadly had gave up religion. Religion, it seemed to me, was speaking loud and clear. I was an outsider, persona non grata. And I know some of you have had that experience as well. So for me, it was time to leave. And I had to find out where I belonged. Now, years ago, I read a memoir about a woman who lived in a city in California. I think it was the Bay Area. She was married, she had kids, she had a job, all those so-called normal things. but she was not content. And she was not connecting to her life. She had questions. She had lots of them. We've gone through periods of that. Maybe some of you are having that experience now. And she wanted answers. Mostly, she wanted meaning and she wanted to find true happiness, but she didn't know how to find it where she was. And one day, while she was on a trip to New York City, she was in a shop and she saw some beautiful quilts. And she discovered that they were Amish quilts, meaning that they were quilts made by Amish women. I don't know if you've seen those quilts, those Amish quilts, but they are, I mean, they're exquisite and they're also incredibly expensive and worth it. There are Amish quilt shows that happen around the country. There's even Amish quilt exhibits at top museums. But here she was in a shop looking at the Amish quilts. She was entranced and she had that thought to herself, which was, the Amish are always happy and they seem so content with no problems. And she thought, I want what they have. Now, I don't know about you. I do know about many of you, but I've had that thought about someone else or some other group. I want what they have. We often look at others and think, as the saying goes, that their grass is greener than ours. That culture of comparison is everywhere, maybe even more so now than ever, because you only need to scroll on Facebook or Instagram to see, shiny, happy Photoshopped lives that always seem so perfect. They're always by the pool, or they're by the fireplace reading Hemingway, or they're making, their own wine, or they're, if it's snowing, they're having fun shoveling the sidewalk. I mean, it's easy to look at their lives and compare and say, I want what they have. It's easy to project onto those people who are just choosing to post positive things, that they don't have problems because their life on the outside looks so good. And like this author, our culture tends to have a romantic view of Amish culture. I remember reading a story once in Guidepost magazine. Do you remember that magazine? About a family who lived in Lancaster County, which is an area where it's famous for having a large Amish population. And many of you have probably gone to Lancaster. It's so close, but it's fantastic to go there. This family wasn't Amish, but they just lived in that area. Anyway, they had a cat who had just given birth to a litter of kittens. So they put up a big sign out front that said, kittens free for a good home. And day after day after day went by and no takers for any of the cats. So then they had a brainstorm and they put up a new sign, and the sign said, Amish kittens, $100 each. And they were gone by the end of the day. We romanticize the Amish, right? And this woman, this author, was romanticizing the Amish. She was staring at the quilts thinking that the Amish had no problems. And so she decided she was going to take a sabbatical from her life to go live among the Amish. She was going to spend a few months taking a vacation from her life, I guess you could say, so that she could learn the secrets of a happy Amish life. And she did some research, made some calls. She was able to find 2 Amish families that she could stay with, and off she went. Now, she thought that the magic or the ending to that story would be that she found some secrets to happiness and magically change and come back to her life happy and fulfilled forever. And of course, we know that's not quite what happened. Long story short, she discovered that the Amish are not perfect, that they have problems, they have conflicts, just like us. Of course they do. But she also learned that some of the things like from that Amish culture that did inspire her. For instance, she learned that the Amish community that she lived in valued connecting with the whole community. And the way they connected was by doing. So if a neighbor needed help, they would help them in the way that the neighbor needed help. In other words, if a neighbor's barn got damaged, that neighbor didn't need a hug and a sad face emoji. They needed their barn fixed. So the community would roll up their sleeves and fix the barn. The men, the women, young, old, children, they all participated. She also learned that while the Amish worked really hard, they also took time to rest and reflect and relax daily. She had never done that in her life. One of her aha moments was when she realized that on the outside looking into the Amish world, it all seemed so easy. But after her sabbatical, she realized that miracles come after a lot of hard work. So she did her sabbatical and she returned different. She was expanded by her personal experiences of a culture so different from her own. And she took that wisdom back to her life, and it changed her life because she came back changed. I was reading, this is the book I'm reading devotionally right now, The Power of Awareness and Other Works by Neville Goddard. And in his book, The Power of Awareness, he says this is so good. I mean, you can see like every page is underlined and highlighted. This is an amazing book. He said, you know a thing mentally by looking at it from the outside, by comparing it with other things, by analyzing it and defining it. Whereas you can know a thing spiritually only by becoming it. You must be the thing itself and not merely talk about it or look at it. So that's what she did. She went and experienced it and came back different. Now me, I hightailed it out of my hometown at 18 to the safety of the big city, which was Denver, to find my place, my people, my tribe. And you know what they say, your tribe matches your vibe. And that's when I found Science of Mind and the whole New Thought philosophy. And when I found it, it was like, I found my tribe. I found my people, and it fit me like a glove. And I know some of you have had that same experience when you discovered this philosophy. It's like, wow, this is it. And it had its own culture, it had its own language. So one of the things I had to learn, and I know many of you have had to learn, was the language of this philosophy. Words like one mind, treatment, consciousness, the I am. I mean, listen to this. This is just as an example. He says, this is on page 275 of The Power of Awareness. He says, the light is consciousness. Consciousness is one, manifesting in legions or forms or levels of consciousness. I am is a feeling of permanent awareness. The very center of consciousness is the feeling of I am. I may forget who I am, where I am, what I am, but I cannot forget that I am. I mean, didn't read anything like this in any book or, religious book that I had ever read before. It was like learning it all new, and it was great. It was so wonderful. And like I know for many of you, the Science Mind and New Thought gave me so many gifts. And one of these amazing gifts was the gift of seeing that connectedness of all religions, all people, all faiths everywhere underneath the human barriers. I had found my tribe. Many of you have found your tribe. And I felt then that I could finally connect with people of different faiths and beliefs, because in our New Thought philosophy, we take the best of all cultures, the best of all faiths, the best of all sacred works, and we take the truths out of them. We filter out the truths and find that there's commonality, and underneath it all is oneness. And that's a great gift. That is an amazing gift, to be able to know that for ourselves, but for the world around us. Most people don't have that gift. I remember when I first became a practitioner, I was having a discussion, this is back in the 90s. I was having a discussion with a friend of mine, a woman who happened to be evangelical Christian, and she and I got along great. We had wonderful discussions. We didn't change each other's minds, but we just talked a lot. We had lots and lots of beliefs. We had different spiritual cultures, but we enjoyed each other's company. And one time I invited her to come with me to an event at the local Hindu temple. This is in Denver, where they were going to do some chanting and devotional, and the audience could watch them while they did it. It was fascinating. It was so great. And we went, she stayed, she watched. She didn't participate in any way, but she stayed. And when you watch them as they were doing this devotional chanting, the looks on their faces, oh my gosh, it was just pure bliss. They were in it. They were in it. It was bliss. And after the event, my friend and I were discussing it. She said, I said, what do you think? She said that she felt it was not of God. She said that they believed in the Bhagavad Gita and she believed in the Bible. And I said, but you saw that look of pure bliss on their faces. It's the same bliss that I see on your face when you go into prayer and sing your songs and your hymns. And she said, and I can still remember her saying it to me, she goes, yes, but their bliss is based on their book, and my bliss is based on my book, and my book is the right one. She couldn't see, somehow she couldn't see it was the same bliss. But we get to see that in New Thought philosophy. That's a gift that we get that really makes such a difference in how we move and live in this world. Anyway, I was so grateful to have a philosophy to see those things, to have a spiritual culture where I didn't need to make her wrong, but I was grateful of my different perspective. So anyway, as we learn and grow into our spiritual tribe, and look at these beautiful faces on the screen, if you want to see who's in your tribe, some of the people in your tribe, where we both all feel connected and accepted and lovingly challenged. This is where we can change, we heal, we grow. Like an onion, is that somebody piping in? All right, I think it's okay. Like an onion, we shed layer and layer of pain and fear, resentment, identity, rigidity, anger, whatever else we have, we shed those like layers of an onion to that core, to that place where he said is the I am, that place where our soul resides. So, like that author, sometimes you have to go away somewhere and then bring back what you learned with you. Or like me, sometimes you have to leave to find where you belong. And now, going back to that place I grew up in, I couldn't wait to leave. I'm coming back to it, bringing my authentic self to it. Seeing the place not through the lens of a scared boy who lived there and had to escape, but through the lens of the person I grew into, through the lens of this amazing science of mind and New Thought philosophy that we get to learn and grow in. And I think that is the beauty of our spiritual culture, our tribe. We can bring it with us wherever we go, because through practice, through forgiveness, through study, through trial and error, we become it. You can go into any situation, breathe, connect, and see spirit in all things, all experiences, and all people. So, in closing, my point is this. You don't need to go out there to find your spiritual culture. You can. You can go live with the Amish if you want. But ultimately, what we find is that every path, every single one of them leads to the same place, which is in here. And the more we embody it, the more it becomes who we are. That's our spiritual culture. And we can bring it to every place we go, every person we meet, and everything we do. And so it is. Let's bring this into spiritual mind treatment, which is language of our culture, spiritual mind treatment. I remember the first time I heard those words, I was like, what? Spiritual mind? Are they going to put some electrodes on my head to get to the mind and treat it? And then I discovered what it is, which is a powerful spiritual practice of affirmative prayer so that we can go to that place that Neville that I just read from, that place of the I am. And he says in that book that the I am is the beginning point and the ending point, because the I am is pure consciousness. He said we can forget where we are, we can forget everything else. But when we remember that one truth, who we are, whose we are, that's when we know and can connect deeply. Our spiritual culture is one of connecting to ourselves and our soul, and connecting underneath all the humanness to the soul within everything and everyone. And right now we do that. We go to that place of connectedness, where that power is in and through all people, all places. And we just stop there. We pause. We know it and we feel it. We don't need to demand anything of it right now because we are it. And knowing it and that it pulses through every atom, molecule, and fiber of our being, we expand, we grow, and we live it. So today I know for each one of us that we live this truth everywhere we go and in all places. This is who we are. We choose right now to remember it, to live it, and let it be. Together we say, and so it is.